suggestions on getting these conversations started. I know at our elementary school, I'm not dealing firsthand, but because I work close with our behavior specialist and social counselor, and we're getting a lot of kids that are, I'm assuming, acting out from everything that's going on around them in our communities because of COVID is exacerbated traumas that they already had going on in their lives. So I feel like we're having to deal with a lot more not being kind to each other, or just to put, just to generalize it. But how? What are some suggestions of how? I'm not in one class right now. I do have access to just all of the classrooms. So just what might be something I could contribute to get those conversations started.
What do you think that that the school system has sort of doubled down on instruction in some ways to make up for what they felt was missed during COVID?
Yeah, I do feel
okay. That's what I'm finding around the country, and let me just tell you that makes the teachers and the children miserable. So that's one thing that isn't necessarily related to home issues that is going on in the school, and it puts a whole lot more pressure on both teachers and students. But I think most kids just really want somebody, when they get to the field, and being able to trust them, to be able to talk to. And that's why I said lunch is so important, because a lot of times kids will talk over doing something else rather than a direct conversation. And so I think I would, talk to what's going on. How was it when you were at home? Trying to do lessons on how is it now that you're back at school? What would you like to see us do in school? Whatever kind of seems to connect to the kid, but also doing it, like I said, over something that isn't a direct conversation, because kids will shut down if you're talking directly to them when they already are acting out. My experience. Thank you. So you probably know more than I do with your so much experience in the situation that you are.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think I have like a little bit of a different mindset because my focus is on early childhood education. And right now in my pre-K and even I'm seeing it in first grade, social emotional behaviors and like connections, and like actually teaching them how to like properly handle those communications so when they get to the higher grade levels. So my question to you is, because I really picked up on your kindergarten, is like, that's their foundation. Like I feel like having those really strong kindergarten teachers to like encourage and help support and show all the things they can learn. And they might be more math generated or they might be more art generated. Do you think like social emotional behavior should be one of their big focuses starting off as well in what you were talking about?
I don't want to separate social and emotional from instructional. And I think that's one of the tendency we have to do. Like we have the tendency to do that. In one district I was working with, they said, okay, we spend the first 2 weeks doing relationship building and then we move on to instruction. And my belief of that was, no, it should all be incorporated and so that your instruction is designed to also be able to engage in social and emotional, what we're now calling social and emotional learning. What we, of course, but good teachers have always called it is building relationship, getting to know the kids, and giving them ways of interacting that will help them become their best selves. So yes, we need to do that. We don't have to necessarily name it any particular thing, but we need to make sure that it's incorporated in everything I think we do with young kids. How is that making you feel? I mean, to the child, even if it's talking about science and the kid starts acting out. Oh, something's making you unhappy in here. Does that help at all?
Yeah.
I mean, does that answer from my perspective? Because I'm sure, again, your perspective is as valid as mine in a lot of these. Any other thoughts, guys? Yes, sir.
I'm curious about your opinions on if we discuss, the academic setting, elementary setting, whatever it may be, ultimately the goal is for our students to be self-realized and independent, and we help them, we contribute to that as educators. It seems like the academic world and the elementary, in my case, the elementary environment is very insular and very much in itself. We're doing everything we possibly can to address all these deficiencies, needs, social, emotional, as you just mentioned, or whatever. What percentage, if we had to create, in our minds, do we contribute to this self-realization of independence versus the environmental? Things are beyond our control. What would you say our contributions look like in terms of percentage? Because it seems like just seems strictly insular, like beyond our control. Also, when kids step out of the school gates, like if we had to put a percentage to how much we're contributing to the wellness of this child, what percentage would that be?
100.
100?
Well, let me just go back a little bit. I believe that learning is an aspect of the well-being of the child. So I don't separate that from the emotional component. I think, the schools have come up and school districts have come up with talking to us about the deficiencies that our children have had as a result of COVID. I think that's the wrong perspective for us to take. That's the do you know what I know question. I think we need to get our opportunity to ask the kids, what do you know? In that they get to talk about whatever's going on outside so that removes your insularity that you're feeling. And it's difficult because you have to get to also understand, and I think you have to do it in groups because it's pretty hard to do it individually, understand how standards are going to connect to being able to have children talk about, write about, think about what it is that they want to bring into the classroom, what it is that they feel the need to talk about. It all can be connected, for sure. If you want me to try an example, I will, if there's something in your head, I will try to give an example of how it might be done. But when we are put in a position of constantly seeking and thinking about the deficiencies, then that gives us a mindset that is going to not only make the kids miserable, but us miserable too, because we don't see that light and the excitement from the children, which we can see if we ask them to bring in information and I know how difficult it is because the school said you have to do this, you have to go through this, you have to learn it, and I just want us to be able to step back for a second and think about how can I combine these? How can we combine the well-being of the child with some of these things that we're being asked to teach them? Is there an example? Is there something that comes to mind when you?
That word deficiency is just explicit throughout our curriculum. It's very much what we're taught.
Say it again.
That word the word deficiency is very much literally, explicitly told to us in the curriculum that we're taught to teach.
Right.
It's like we can't separate it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If we operate as teachers as we want, as creatively, individually, however we want, it's like we're going against the grain. you know?
That's the point.
You know? So, I mean, I just don't, I mean, it seems like I'm not even a teacher yet, you know?
Right,
I'm just not trying to get in trouble,
yes.
like, I'm just trying to get my job done, you know?
I hear you.
And be that, like, you know, be of some inspiration to kids, you know, beyond my classroom. But, yeah, I mean, I'm just curious about these conversations. I have to talk about you this individually, you know what I mean? Like, what are they ultimately, like, you discussed, like, pedagogy earlier, I mean, how to teach, you know what I mean? Which is, like, we're missing the point. We're being taught what to teach, you know? And it's just a funny kind of very, yeah.
See, I think that the what to teach can still be, you're being told what to teach. You're not being told as much how to teach. You're being told some, but not as much. So what I want us to do is think about how to change the how to teach so that it better engages the children. We're still teaching the what. For example, let's say there's something that kids need to learn by rote. I don't know. What is something that, what grade?
I'm going for third grade, but rote, I'm assuming like the ABCs in that specific time. Like that's like rote memorization of letters or whatever.
Right. I was trying to think of something a little higher up. Let's say multiplication. I'm going to go to language arts for a minute. My mother was a math teacher, and I had to avoid it because of that. But I'm thinking of, let's say, nouns and verbs, because they start in first, well, sometimes not, they're starting in kindergarten, but they're definitely starting in first grade with parts of speech, nouns and verbs. And to have kids, for example, I'm teaching nouns and verbs, one group will be given verbs that they have to act out. One group will be given nouns that they have to act out. And then the other kids have to determine which is it a noun or a verb that they're doing. And the idea that a noun is a thing, whereas a verb is an action. The fact that they're acting it out, or another way that they can do it is to create, again, worksheets for each other. Anytime you get the kids engaged in some of the teaching component, then you are engaging them and their creativity, their mindset, their that's not what I want. Emotional, yeah, social and emotional learning. So the thing is, let's really spend some time as you're watching the teacher, and I guess you probably have an opportunity to watch the teacher teach as well. In your head, think about how could we do that so that the kids have a much greater engagement in it, that they are becoming the teacher, that they are connecting to each other. And just, you don't have to tell the teacher, you can if you have that relationship, but just put it in your head so that you'll begin to have some sense of, even if I have the what, how can I use teaching that what in a different way? Is that something that makes sense?
Everything makes sense. Yeah, I agree with everything. It's originally from my original question, we straight away completely, but I think, no, yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and that's the exciting thing about teaching, I think. To me, the exciting thing for me is not the what, but the how, so that I can figure out how best to engage the children.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation earlier today. I am an international student at UNLV from Nigeria, so there's so much to learn for me. And excitedly, over the course of the Christmas break, my supervisor gave me 2 of your books. So I spent the Christmas reading, and when I got the opportunity to come listen to you, I was beyond excited. Thanks so much. Thank you for the impact of the year. Now, I want you to throw more light on recitation. You spoke about cultural supportive learning modality, and you talked about, you gave, I think, 5 hours. But I'm so interested in the recitation aspect. I don't know if you could just kind of
Tell me why you're interested in it.
Well, my dad is a teacher, and growing up in Nigeria, I had my primary and secondary and university and tertiary education in Nigeria. This is one method that we use in the classroom. So when students come to the classroom in the morning, there are certain things they get to recite before the class begins. Things like the days of the week, depending on the grade, we call it class. So there are certain things we recite that, even as an adult, I can't remember. So it's quite interesting that you would point that out, and I want you to find it.
Right, and that is not something that you will likely be told in teacher education or in the curriculum to do. The recitation is what she's talking about. But we have found that for a lot of children, the recitation is actually a very strong learning aspect. The idea, and connected to that, the rhythm, and which is something that many children of color will get very much engaged with. And that's why I talked about the kid with the pencils, have them do the percussion background so that you can do the recitation. But yes, recitation, it's something that I think some of the more modern curriculum developers decided was an old-fashioned methodology. And so they got rid of it and said we have to instead teach for understanding. But the recitation, once you have it in your brain, okay, now we got multiplication, that's a good one. Even the recitation of the multiplication tables, especially if done with a particular movement or rhythm, will put those in the child's brain, and then you can teach to help make sure they understand what those things mean. But they have to be in your brain. If you just teach for understanding, and that means every time you approach a multiplication problem, you're going to have to go through the whole process of understanding how to put the numbers and what to do with them, as opposed to having it already on the tip of your tongue because it's been incorporated into your being. So yes, recitation, don't listen to people who say that you should never do it. However, if there are principals who say you should never do it, don't ever do it in front of the principal. But that's the idea, of fugitive pedagogy, that we got to figure out what's out there, what makes sense, and figure out ways to do it, even though we're not in a system that may be supporting it. And many of you are very new in the teaching arena, and so you don't necessarily know what to do right now. But you can look at stuff and see, this does not seem to be working for 3 or 4 or 5 of the kids in this class. I wonder what else. And so you need your bag of tricks, so to speak, to be expansive, your pedagogical strategies to be expansive so that you can try something else. And you might do some reading about the particular cultural group that it is you're having trouble with to see if there are some strategies that researchers have indicated that would work. And recitation is definitely one of them because it's familiar. There's a church. Within church, there's a lot of repetition and recitation, and you need to look and see how kids have learned in other settings that they exist in. And don't try to go completely against that. Use that to support whatever it is you're trying to teach. Gina, you might say.
I was wondering how, and also anybody in here who's had any experiences, how difficult is it to implement fugitive pedagogy in a system which has expectations that aren't meant for us?
Very. It can be. It depends on the school and how supportive the principal is to what works. There are some places that I don't care what works. This is what the curriculum says. And in those instances, you have to certainly appear to be doing what the curriculum says to whenever. But the thing is, you have a lot more leeway than you think. And the people who I know who went from teachers to principals and to higher, supposedly higher positions, have all said that the most freedom they had was when they were classroom teachers. And we don't take advantage of it. And we don't know it because everybody's like pushing down on you and saying, you know, you have to do all this. But for the most part, they're not there. So, you know, the metaphorical book under the desk, like Miss McGee, we can do it. And that's what that's my role now. That's what I'm pushing for you guys. I don't want you to get fired, but I want you to, and again, not think about it just by yourself. You need to create groups. And they can be groups from your school, from schooling. They can be groups from the school who have similar kinds of ideas as you. They can be people from another school, online or whatever. So you can support each other to figure out how to do this and stay employed. And just keep in mind, while you're trying to learn, like the gentleman back here said, how to learn just to be able to keep this job. You don't have to do that much right away, but just keep a journal to say, this might be a way to do this differently. And then as you get into a position of being a teacher, then you can try some of those. Does that make sense? Okay. I think I'm supposed to stop now. And while I'm leaving and the other person is coming in, you might want to stand up and do some jumping jacks.
You still have like 3 minutes.
Okay.
And what I was going to say is between those 10 minutes, if you want to stay with Dr. Lisa Lisa, a couple of more minutes, you can also do that.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to raise something?
I would be very curious, Dr. Delpit, how did the concept of fugitive pedagogy, that really caught my attention ever since you sent your materials and I read that. That is a term I wasn't familiar with. And do you know where the term fugitive
From Jarvis.
pedagogy?
Jarvis is, he's also a friend who wrote the book. And he got a lot of the notions that he uses in his book, and I'm not going to remember the name, from a scholar who is from Las Vegas. And he's now, I think, in New York. But this scholar, a black scholar, his mother was a teacher in Las Vegas and had to use the equivalent of fugitive pedagogy in order to teach the children she was trying to teach. So it's a strong Las Vegas connection, actually. Gosh, I wish I could remember his name. His name is, if you ever get to read the book, I don't have it with me. There is a statement somewhere where in the beginning, where he talks about this work is built upon my learning from this particular fellow. And that particular fellow is somebody who is originally from Las Vegas and had a mother who was a teacher here. So you have, it's in your blood, it's in your environment, it's in the air that you're breathing. You can do it. Okay. So are they ready to switch or no?
Just in time.
Oh, good.
Just in time.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.